Who is Sly?
He's the guy that you never see coming or going, or even when he's there. He's uncatchable, like a baseball made of air.
Sly Cooper comes from a long line of master thieves.
Thievius Raccoonus. Thievius Raccoon. It's so much fun to say, Kevin. I love it. Is. I wish I know what the first Sly Cooper game was, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, which I wish that there was a more fun title for this particular game, because Thieves in Time just abbreviates to TIT, and I don't want to say I played that new Sly Cooper TIT game because people will be like, oh, that guy's into some weird stuff.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to the Loading Bar. We're talking today about Sly Cooper, Thieves in Time. I'm Jeff, and I have with me Kevin.
Hello.
And I'm kind of at a loss as to where to start about this.
Well, when was the last time you played a 3D platforming game?
Never. I mean, if you're talking about like 3D television, I don't have a 3D TV.
Well, yeah, I did, and but also like just in general, like a platform game that's still like, because Mario these days pretty much 2D. Nintendo kind of going old school with all those games, and then it's like on the PlayStation and stuff. I haven't played one of these in a long time. Ratchet and Clank,
Yeah, that was the last one probably that I played. Was
right. They're kind of not as common. Used to be back in the day. You'd get one every 2 weeks. There'd be a new one.
In fact, during that golden time, I actually skipped a lot of that stuff. Like the first few Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper. A lot of those games I didn't play. This is actually the first Sly Cooper game that I've ever played. And
wow. Yeah.
I have to say that I liked it. I thought it was good. This is also the first game that wasn't done by Sucker Punch. That was done by Sanzaru Games, who the only previous thing that looks like they've done is they did there was a Sly Cooper HD collection that came out a little while back that they worked on, as well as Secret Agent Clank on the PSP. So they've got a little bit of experience with this. But yeah, this just seemed like it was just one of those games where it seemed like every time I was starting to get a little bit bored, they were like, Here's another game. Here's a shmup. Here's a mini game. Like, go get this character.
I know, it was so bizarre to me because like you just get, you go and then all of a sudden the game completely changes to something else, and then you're just like driving tanks around or whatever, and you're just like, this is bizarre, but totally fun. I had a really good time with it as well.
Yeah, I was actually a little disappointed that there was no kart racing in this game because they kind of managed to throw everything else in here. But for those who don't know, this is Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. This follows the story of Sly Cooper, master raccoon thief man guy, whatever, whose ancestors are being wiped out of the Thievius Raccoonus by some ne'er-do-wells. And so you have to travel through, what is it? Feudal Japan, blah, 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 4 or 5 different time periods, kind of righting the wrongs, Quantum Leap style of the things that have gone wrong to kind of bring the Cooper family back into reality. And this actually, I mean, like each one of those levels is kind of presented as a smaller kind of open world area where there's all this stuff to pick up. There's all these little collect 100 of these things and grab these treasures and run them back in a time limit. And there's secret stuff all over the place. And, any part of that description could have gotten stale, except for, like I said, since you move between different time periods, just about the time that you're starting to get, just like, there's a new place. There's a brand new area with a brand new set of enemies and geometry and new little nooks and crannies to go and explore. And, I had a really good time.
And you get different characters to play as. I mean, you're not just constantly playing as Sly Fox or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Sly Cooper.
Kevin, you don't want to enrage the people in the comments. The Sly
you know what? There's a bar over here I always go to called the Sly Fox. So I was just thinking about drinking rather than the video game. So and you get to play as different characters, and like Jeff was saying, when you're in these worlds, it's somewhat open ended in the sense that it tells you where to go, but it's not just a straight line. There's lots of variation in how you want to reach where you're going, which I found, not always, but in a lot of cases, rather I don't know, a little bit more enjoyable than it would be if I was just doing something that was just real linear like most platform games are.
Right. And it helps the fact that, you talked about switching characters, but the main three characters here is you've got Sly Cooper, who's a little bit more sneaky, a little bit more nimble, usually spending a lot of times like up on top of rooftops. You've got Bentley, who has this kind of souped up wheelchair with Doc Ock arms and jets and bombs and all kinds of stuff.
Hooray for the handicap.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got a hero now that they can that has a totally blinged out wheelchair.
We've talked a little bit before on some of the shows about like kind of representing different, people with kind of a different point of view than your standard space marine white guy male or whatever. Right. I got to give it to this game. Like, that character had their own set of skills and was really, there's a bunch of times in the game where you play as that character and there are a bunch of puzzles that are specifically tailored to that specific gameplay style. And then you've got the giant pink hippo, the Murray, who's maybe my favorite character in the game, who's just big, brawling, like no subtlety whatsoever, can barely jump on top of anything. But, as you go through the game, you get a series of upgrades, and like the upgrades for him are like, do you want to hit him with your regular fists? Or do you want to hit him with electric fists? Do you want to hit him with fire fists? Do you want to hit him with exploding fists? Like, yeah, I want to do all that stuff and more. And then as the game goes on, you also get the various Cooper relatives who come in who all have their own kind of way of doing stuff. In the beginning, you have it's feudal Japan. You've got a character that's a little bit more nimble than Sly. There's characters with guns. There's characters with, that have swords or different ways that they are able to attack. All of which just kind of keeps the game feeling fun and engaging, throughout, which, I don't know about you, but like this game took me between somewhere in the area of like 15 to 20 hours to get all the way through. And
yeah, it's a big game because, they diversify the missions that you're doing. You're not just progressing, you're doing things like, for instance, you had to go take all those photos, and so you're basically doing like recon at some point, but, and then there's like fighting and it's just, it's kind of, I don't know, it's just really well put together in the sense that there's a lot to do here, and it's all in, like, compartmentalized bites so that you're never, like, feeling like it's a really long task to get through.
Which actually, I think that some of that may even speak to the fact that this is one of those PlayStation games that has the cross-buy functionality on it.
Yes.
Where if you buy it, you can get on the Vita. Did you play it on the Vita at all?
I didn't. I rented the game from GameFly, and it had the Vita game on there, and I was like, well, I'll try it. And it said, this will only work one time on your PlayStation. I was like, okay. and it worked. So whoever gets the next, like, my rental disc back, in their collection, if they want to try it, you're out of luck because I've got the game.
We just make a habit of renting all of these cross-buy games and just take them out of the slipcover, activate the cross-buy, and then send them back to GameFly. Like, just, fuck you guys, it's mine.
I'm not gonna play it, so I might as well. So yes.
But it's kind of a question that I think is maybe going to come up the more that we see these cross-buy games. But one thing that I can kind of level as a little bit of a criticism against the game was that it also, like, there wasn't anything wrong with, like, say the way that the game looked, but it seemed like I've seen some of the Ratchet and Clank games. I've seen some of these sorts of games they put out on the PlayStation 3 that seemed like they were maybe just a little bit sharper than this was, maybe a little bit more detailed, and I can't help but think that might be because of the cross-buy compatibility.
I don't know. I just, sometimes I just felt like the development team just kind of didn't want to spend the money to really, blow up all the textures and make the thing more than it was. You know what I mean? Like, I think, you could certainly make a really good-looking game. Assassin's Creed looked really good on the Vita. And so, it's, I hear what you're saying, but I just got a feeling that this was more like a kid's game and they probably didn't have a big budget and they kind of just, it's really high quality for what they've got, but at the same time, I thought it looked a lot like the PlayStation 2 games.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I could totally see that. It also kind of had that cell shading that I'm not a super big fan of, but that's really neither here nor there. It's just an aesthetic thing. It doesn't really like play into the game. And it's not, it's not irritating or it doesn't take away anything. So let's kind of go over.
I'm just glad that they didn't like try to change it in a way that radically altered the game because it's sort of a series and it's a really good game that you can give kids and they can pick up and play. And you're not getting something and all of a sudden it's like just a completely different genre of game. Like a first-person shooter, Sly Cooper,
right?
Or something. And sometimes that happens with a lot of these game franchises where they're trying to mix it up constantly. And it's nice for once in a while to just go back to something classic and have it be just a continuation of what it was. Which, I don't know. It just makes me feel better in a way because a lot of these games constantly are trying to evolve so that their characters can be more relevant and stick around. And, so you can sit there and say, well, it used to be like this and now it's like this. And, I don't know if I'm just rambling here, but I kind of enjoyed the fact that the game, stuck to its roots.
Yeah. No, I totally see that. Like, there's a definitely, when you talk about game development, there's definitely a case to be made for just doing the thing that this series has done and doing it as well as you can. If you just make an exceptionally well-produced game, that you don't necessarily have to break outside of the box and start doing crazy weirdness or change the whole thing up or quote unquote reinvent the series or, reboot or anything like that. You just make a good game, which, like the story that we had in here, it was extremely serviceable for what the game was. Like, it probably didn't even need as much story as it had. From time to time, the game would break over into these really well animated cutscenes that would show you, kind of give you a little bit more insight into the characters. It seemed like each one of the characters in the game had an arc, even if they were very small. Sly Cooper's, I don't know if she's his nemesis or his girlfriend or both.
Little of both, yeah.
Sexy fox lady, Carmelita Fox shows up, and she's got, there's places where it's not clear where her loyalties are. They've got a whole wonderful group of weird anthropomorphic bad guy enemies. There's one that's an armadillo, there's one that's an elephant. They've all got these the crazy, backstories that they go over from time to time. And all that stuff, if they had just made a solid game that did nothing but focus on Sly the entire time, as I keep saying, it probably would have gotten stale. But the only other thing that I may level as a little bit of a criticism against this game is that while they do change up the areas and they do change up kind of the challenges in each one of the individual past areas, they don't change up the enemies. They're very much just reskinned versions. And these are the enemies that are walking around in the world. When you just go out, there's a heavies guys, there's a ranged guy, and there's kind of a light version of the enemies, and they tend to be the same enemies in all three of the time periods with just different skins, different animals applied on top of them, so that by the time you got to the end, you're kind of like, well, I've been dealing with these guys the entire game, and it's not like the later game versions were more difficult or they expanded their set of attacks or anything like that. They were pretty much super easy. That and by the time you get to the end of the game, you start to see that there is a little bit of repetition as far as what you do in each individual time period. Seems like you got to rescue your ancestor, then you got to figure out who the bad guy is, then you got to do all this stuff to get a plan, then you take down the bad guy. And they changed some of that up a little bit, but for the most part, it's the same throughout. But so that by the end of the game, when I got to the end of the game, it was good. I felt like it was good that it was over. That if there'd been one more level, that it might have started to kind of outstay its welcome. As the game goes. So, I guess.
What you said, Jeff.
Yeah. Get me rambling over here.
I think with games like this, you got to look at it the fact that it's targeted a younger audience. I really, if you're a fan of the genre, you could have a lot of fun with this and stuff like that. But I really don't see a bunch of 30, 40-year-old guys going out and buying a Sly Cooper game. I think this is really something that's more for the kids, and I think it executes really well in that regard. And they're not going to be the kind of people that have been through the ringer on video games 1,000 times like we have over and over again, that they're going to find a lot of these things stale, that we might find stale. I think that they would play this game and have a great deal of fun with it. Yeah, that would definitely work. The only other thing I guess I would probably mark down as a little bit of a hindrance was I felt like sometimes, the way they do the platforming elements in this game, where you jump and then you hit a button to kind of latch on to a thing. There were a couple times in the game that I found myself cursing the game's unborn children for dropping me in that pit because I was totally over that line. God damn it! The controls are a little bit delayed and not very. I found exactly the same thing. It gets a little bit confusing at times whether you're supposed. like that, the hook button, for instance, when you're trying to hook on to something and you're jumping and you're like, now, do I jump twice and then press hook? Or do I just hook? And it just seems to like sometimes work and sometimes not, which was, very frustrating. But at the same time, the game seems to be very, in certain situations, it tends to be lenient in the sense that you don't necessarily die if you fall. But then in other situations, like when you're trying to be stealthy, and you keep being seen because of this failure, then it gets really kind of annoying. Yeah, and you know me in stealth games, not really going my way.
I don't know. This was about as easygoing of a stealth game as humanly possible. Like the enemies in this game are pretty much blind unless you're standing in front of their face, going, "Hey, hey, hey, your mom sucks." Like, that, and the only other thing I don't want to harp too much on this game because I don't feel like it really. We'll get to why I don't want to harp too much on it later on. But there were also a couple places where I found like the frame rate really chugged in the game, which for a game that looks like this and a game of this particular type, I don't really know that there's any good reason to not just be a solid 60 frames per second. It seems like I don't exactly think they were pushing the PlayStation until it turned white hot with processing heat, for this particular game. That being said, like we said before, there are a ton of mini games in here. There's a couple of kind of dual joystick shooter sequences. There's some shmup sequences. There's even a few sequences that use the goddamn motion controls on the 6-axis controller, which I had forgotten, Kevin, how much I disliked those until it was like, oh, no.
Yeah, I had that with that Shattered Spear, heavy, whatever that was called, that used the 6-axis motion control. And I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of the 6-axis motion control. They should just let that feature die.
Yeah. But then again, there's also just a metric ass load of unlocks for this. There's things that you get from bringing treasure back. There's things that you get from collecting bottles. There's things that you get from collecting masks. There's a Batman suit in here for Sly. It basically makes him look like Batman. And then it got me thinking. I got into this weird philosophical tangent where I was like, you know what? This might be... Sly Cooper 4 might actually be one of the better Batman games I've ever played. Start thinking because you've got you've got a turtle in a wheelchair he could swap out for Oracle. You've got this big, hulky guy that could maybe, you could maybe make that Superman. I was like, well, this game's on the PC. I'm going to start up a modding community. We're just going to make this into the next Arkham game.
There's no big pink hippo in Batman.
Well, but there's Solomon Grundy. Maybe he could be that guy. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Anyway, Sly Cooper 4, the other thing to just, to keep in mind with this is, I just looked this up online. The game is $40. Which
it's a great deal. You get both. You get the Vita game and this game. If you have a Vita, it's great. And it's a kid's game. It's priced right, and they threw everything at the kitchen sink at it. So it's really hard to be skeptical about this title.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm going to give it a full price.
Absolutely. I'm in the exact same camp. It's full price. Again, though, know your audience. It's definitely targeted for a younger age group. We're not saying that if you're like the Medal of Honor guy that you should be out there picking this up.
Yeah. Of course, maybe that is what's next for the Sly Cooper series. It'll be hardcore Sly Cooper parachuting into World War II and killing those damn Nazi turtles or whatever they are.
Where is Sly? When is Sly? Who is Sly? Are you?